I think we have introduction songs. This is Progressive Oregon.
Oh, Larry, I'm so bad. I'm so thinking of the other show. Hi, everybody. This is John, and I totally messed up Larry's intro. Normally, there's a song. Give me a minute. We'll play this. You can't do this show without the song. Here. My bad. Hang on. We'll start over.
Listen up, fellow Democrats. Fight fake news and lies with facts. Save our democracy from right-wing hypocrisy. Keep our integrity, embrace our diversity. Whenever we're down, we always come back. So listen up, Democrats.
Welcome, everyone, to Progressive Oregon, a weekly engagement live stream broadcast on progressive issues in Oregon. My name is Larry Taylor, and I'm with my co-host today, Betsy Cunningham. If you would like to ask questions during the show, you are welcome to do so at the Uphill Media channel for this program, and just type your questions into the chat window. Today's show is something that we should have initiated much longer, a year back when we started these shows. So what we are doing today is giving everyone a preview of what to expect at the State Central Committee of the Democratic Party of Oregon. What usually happens is that people show up, there's some things on Saturday, they party until 9 o'clock, and then they collapse into bed, and then they show up the next morning for a barrage of meetings, and then the meeting itself starts at a little after 1 o'clock. And then that's when they're hit with all of the information that they're being asked to deal with that day. And so what this show is an attempt to give everyone a preview of the issues that are going to be brought before the Assembly to decide. There are 4 issues that we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the credentialing issue, the forced termination of meetings, the undocumented processes standing rule that will be presented, and the convention rules authorship issue that has been brought up. So in terms of the concepts of what we're facing, the first problem is that the concepts of democracy and majority rule are not respected. People still are having difficulty with the concept of majority rule, and there's still attempts to enforce will upon the various assemblies and committees. And they're just not recognizing that the basic concept of a parliamentary process is that the will belongs to the majority. And the other problem that we're facing is that leadership is inventing powers that's not granted to them. So the first issue that we're talking about is about members being deprived of their right to participate. Excuse me. This was first seen a couple of meetings ago when a delegate showed up late and they were denied admission to the State Central Committee. They asked me to what should be done, and so I went to the microphone and made a point of order, and I said, we have people that drove several hours to get here. They're being told that they can't participate. At that point in time, they decided that we would ask the Assembly if they could be admitted, and so that process was followed, and the majority said, yeah, of course they would. And that happened actually to 2 people that had showed up late because they had encountered traffic on their way to get there. I was giving a presentation on June 2nd, earlier this year, and I was talking about the fundamental rights of people in deliberative assemblies. And one of them was the right to attend meetings, so it can't be taken away. And so someone came up and asked me, it's like, well, we're taking away the right to participate with the credentialing process. And that's when it occurred to me that this was a problem. So on the problem statement that we were facing was that members are being deprived of their right to participate in State Central Committee meetings of the Democratic Party of Oregon and at least one Central County Committee meeting. And how did this happen? Well, it was basically well-intended but misguided. The credentials committees passed or the credential committee chair imposed rules regarding when members can be credentialed to participate in meetings. So what does parliamentary procedures say about this? So if we go to the next slide, they're fundamental rights that anyone that's elected to a body, such as a state central committee meeting, have the right to attend meetings, to make motions, to speak in debate, and to vote. These are fundamental principles of parliamentary procedure that have been in effect for hundreds of years. And then in another part of Robert's Rules on page 3, it says no member can be individually deprived of these basic rights of membership or of any basic rights concomitant to them, except through disciplinary proceedings. That means that you cannot have these rights taken away unless you have done something to get ejected from the assembly. And then what the parliamentary rules say about committees is that a committee may not adopt its own rules except as authorized in the rules of the society or in instructions given to the committee by its parent assembly in a particular case. So for anyone who needs translating of that, groups cannot go up and make their own rules. If they are chartered by an assembly, such as the State Central Committee, they cannot go off and make their own rules. They have to propose rules to the State Central Committee, and that has to be given to them. The whole concept of the will of the majority and of a deliberative process in assemblies is that there is a group of people, such as the State Central Committee, and when they start out, they have all the power, and it is their choice to allocate that power out for convenience sake or for whatever reason. So the State Central Committee gives powers to the chair, and they give powers to the executive committee, and they give powers to the admin committee, and they give powers to the standing committee. But the power belongs to the State Central Committee, and it's given out. It is not decided by any of the other groups that have been given powers unless those powers specifically have been given to them. So if we're go to the next slide on credentialing. So it is possible for a rule such as what was in place, and the rule was that the credentialing stops when the meetings begin. It is possible for them to pass this, but it has to be passed as a special rule by the State Central Committee or whatever body that is in charge. So special rules of order supersede any rules in the parliamentary authority with which they might conflict. And there are some common ones that assemblies adopt. One is sometimes it's desirable to adopt an assembly's own order of business. The parliamentary rules of Roberts gives a set order of business, but if an assembly wishes its own, they can establish their own. Another one is that they can set their own length or number of speeches permitted to each member in debate. In Robert's rules, the default is no member can speak on an issue more than twice or longer than 10 minutes. If the assembly would like to change that to 3 times for 2 minutes each or whatever they would like to do, the majority can do that. And so if they wanted to adopt a special rule saying that people cannot be credentialed, the assembly itself has to say, yes, we agree to this. And I think even then it could be debated because it is such a foundational concept of Robert's rules. But if the majority of the assembly agrees to this, then it's not, and it's not a majority, it's a 2/3 vote that's required for special rules. So if 2/3 agree to something, then it's probably not going to be challenged and overturned. So going to what's being done, the Credentials Committee Chair and the DPO Chair were informed of this breach of parliamentary rights, and the Credentials Committee has been instructed to make provisions to remain open for the duration of the State Central Committee meeting. There's a lot of discussion about the credentials report. Really, all the credentials report needs to do is establish that there is a quorum at the meeting. There is no other need for a rule of attending delegates unless someone calls for a roll call vote, or we have to know who's specifically in the meeting. And then this past week, the DPO has issued instructions for bringing the credentialing process into compliance, which we're very happy for, so thank you very much. And if we go to the final slide under credentialing, so what to look for on the 12th, there should be at least one person available to credential members through the duration of the meeting. So if you drove 6 hours from Wallowa County to get to the State Central Committee, and you arrived at 1:30, 15 minutes after the meeting started, you are still entitled to participate in the meeting, and you should be credentialed. If for some reason this is not possible, if you're a delegate, you should go up to the microphone and raise a point of order and protest this. Or you can find me, and I will raise the point of order for you, just like I did previously. But we hope that this will all be smoothed out, and so this one is a non-issue. So this is the happy story from the effort to clean up the Democratic Party and its processes. As you can imagine, when people show up after driving several hours to get there and they're told that they can't participate, they are pissed. And the last thing we need to do is piss off our membership in this time when we really need to be working together.
Larry, there's a question from Oz LaFave. Is there a process to impeach the chair under Robert's rules, or must that be done in a charter? And I think that in one of the other shows you guys do, you covered removing the chair at a meeting, right, for a particular issue or the remainder of the issue. But I don't know if this is for that or just totally removing the chair. It sounds like maybe totally removing the chair. Yes.
So thank you for bringing up the other option too. So if a chair is not performing their role as expected, a majority of the group can remove a chair for the duration of the meeting. If the behavior of the chair is so egregious that the majority wants to remove them completely, there's a process inside Robert's rules that describe how to remove a chair, and usually the rules governing the recall of an officer are described in the bylaws. And so for the Democratic Party of Oregon, you would go to the bylaws and see how a chair is removed. Any other questions?
Well, I just have a clarification. So the bylaws supersede any of the Roberts rules, right? So if there's a provision in the bylaws, that's what you have to follow. If not, it defaults to Roberts rules.
Yes, there's some exceptions. So you can't egregiously take away people's rights, but in general, that is true.
Okay, thanks.
So it goes Robert's Rules of Order, special rules, which are rules that modify the basic parliamentary procedure, standing rules, and then the parliamentary procedure. Excuse me, the other way around. Parliamentary procedure and then standing rules below that.
Thanks.
Just real quick, I want to, Oz and anybody else who's watching this, please go watch the last Robert's Rules show, because it's about reclaiming your rights. And the very first scenario that Larry covers, we play a video of a judicial meeting, and you hear how parliamentarians work to make sure that chairs are kept in line, and it'll make your blood boil when you see the BS that's going on. And this is going on across meetings all across our democracy, right? And Larry's battling it right here at home. And the more we know about this stuff, the more you can battle it. And this is the first level of defense in keeping our democracy straight. So I'd watch all of these. The last one in particular was very, very valuable.
And it's not just me. There's a majority in the Rules Committee that is trying to clean up this stuff. So there are people working on behalf of you to get this fixed. And for those of you who want to diss the Democratic Party, you can get involved and you can make things better. So that is our intention, is to make the Democratic Party a place where we are proud to belong.
There are good people all throughout the party. There are also bad. That's what this effort is. I don't want to diss the party at all. Larry's a good person in the party. All right, carry on. Thank you.
Next one, inappropriately ending meetings. So the problem that we've faced in the 20 years I've attended State Central Committee meetings is that on Sunday morning, they schedule a time slot for a whole host of meetings, standing committee meetings, special committee meetings, caucus meetings, and not enough time is scheduled for them. And so when we get to the top of the hour, DPO staff member enters the meetings and declares the meeting is adjourned because we have to leave the meeting and make room for the next group. Not only is this disrespectful, they do not have the authority to terminate the meetings, but unfortunately we've been good sheeple and we all just sort of stand up and march out. We have tried to alert people that it really belongs to the majority what happens next. And so that's what we're talking about here. So if we go to the next slide on what the parliamentary rules say, a member can propose to close a meeting entirely by moving to adjourn. And if the assembly does not wish to adjourn, the matter is handled as a case of setting aside the orders of the day. And then any committee or caucus member can say, fix the time to which to adjourn, which is the process of setting a time for another meeting to continue business of the session with no effect when the present meeting will adjourn. So what we can do if we do not want to adjourn, and we in the Rules Committee have far more work to do than we've had meetings to handle the work, we can say, I move to recess for 15 minutes and we will reconvene in the lobby. Or we can say, I move to adjourn till Tuesday night at 7 o'clock where we will reconvene. So the work of the committee can continue and you just don't stop it midway through your work. So on the next slide on what we're doing, so we are informing committees of their rights to reconvene. And again, if a majority of the group wishes to continue with the agenda, it would be in order to either recess or adjourn to reconvene. And an adjourned meeting takes up its work at the point where it was interrupted. So you have to do this before everyone walks out of the room. And if you are watching the clock, about 10 minutes before the meeting is going to end, and if it looks like you're not going to be able to complete your work, you can raise your hand, be recognized by the chair, and make a motion to either recess or to have an adjourned meeting. Any questions on that one? Remember, majority rules. It's it's what the majority wants to do. As I said before, if you go to a meeting and the majority want to play bingo, that is their right. They can change the agenda to be bingo for the next 60 minutes. But it's the will of the majority that determines what happens in the meeting.
That's funny. Some of the C-SPANs I've watched, you'd think they voted to have nap time.
No questions? Then we'll go to unapproved policies that circumvent democratic elections. So the problem that we have here is that the Democratic Party of Oregon operates on processes not authorized by the State Central Committee, of which some violate principles of equality and fairness that many Democrats find offensive. If you tell people that are just rank and file Democrats, not associated with politics, what goes on, they find these policies appalling. And how this happened? Well, the DPO leadership, and this is mostly past leadership, developed policies that they were not authorized to create. This goes back to the whole idea of the State Central Committee needing to authorize these things. They were not authorized by the State Central Committee to create these policies. So if they were not passed as special rules or standing rules or bylaws, it goes back to the State Central Committee taking control of things. So it's the bylaws that enable the overall membership of an organization to establish and empower an effective leadership as it wishes, and at the same time to retain exactly the degree of direct control over its affairs that it chooses to reserve for itself. And if you go to the next slide, there's a diagram of this. So again, power is given away by the assembly through the bylaws and the special rules. And anything that is not in the bylaws or the rules are classified as customs. And if the customs are in conflict with the rules, then the customs go away. But this is the concept that keeps getting lost, is that the supreme power in a democracy lies with the people. And in this case, the people are the state central committee delegates, and either they hand out power or they retain it. So the previous chairs were the ones that wrote these undocumented processes or enabled them to be written. And what the DPO bylaws state as the rules of the chair is that the chair is the CEO and chief spokesperson of the DPO, presides at all meetings, calls and chairs the meetings and conference calls, prepares an agenda for the meetings, appoints the chair and vice chair of all committees, appoints legal counsel, and performs those duties assigned by the State Central Committee, the Executive Committee, or the Admin Committee, as well as those customarily delegated to the office of the chair. Nowhere in there does it say that they have the power to create undocumented processes, because if they had been, they would have shown up in one of the documents governing the organization, being the bylaws or the standing rules. So what is being done on this one? Next slide, please. So a motion was made at the second quarter meeting a year ago in 2017 to void all undocumented processes, and that existing processes must be approved by the State Central Committee. The motion was referred to the Rules Committee, where it has been ignored for over a year. About a month and a half ago, we sent two requests. So we sent two requests to the chair of the Rules Committee for a meeting. Those requests were ignored. We sent a request to the chair of the Democratic Party of Oregon saying, hey, is the Rules chair on vacation? Because we had requested the meeting and we got no response. We were then told that if we called our own meeting, it would be, we were not authorized to do so, and a committee meeting was called for tomorrow night, with an agenda that does not encompass anything that we have not dealt with. It's actually a brand new topic. So what we will attempt to do in the Rules Committee is bring the proposed standing rule before the State Central Committee. The standing rule has been written, and we have been waiting patiently for an appropriate time to consider this within the Rules Committee and then pass it to the floor. But we have been sidetracked on other issues. And if a majority wishes to do this at the Rules Committee, then hopefully it will prevail and they will be able to do this. What to look out for? The standing rule, we hope, will be presented during the Rules Committee report for approval at the State Central Committee on the 12th. What you should do, we hope that you will support the elimination of unapproved processes and vote yes on the standing rule. And if you are a precinct committee person, but not a delegate, you need to contact your delegates and urge them to support the standing rule regarding unapproved policies. And just an example of unapproved policies, the access to the voter file has been given to Future PAC and the Senate Leadership PAC, which are not part of the Democratic Party of Oregon. And they are the ones that allocate access to candidates. They are withholding access to anyone challenging an incumbent, so only incumbents get access to the data, and this is what leads to incumbents being in office for years and years on end, not being effectively challenged by anyone, and we end up with candidates like Rod Monroe, who end up getting so egregious that a group of Democrats have to gang up to get him removed from office. We need a level playing field so that all of our candidates have equal access to the voter data so that the electorate can make their decision and choice on who to elect. It's not an incumbent protection plan. So do we have any questions on that one, Betsy?
No, I don't see any questions by the audience, but There actually is an Oregon revised statute that says a party must provide equal access to the resources of the party. So how does that play within this scope?
Well, if that's what it says, then the party's in a violation, and that takes precedence over anything that the party does, including the party bylaws. I would, if you would send me I've not read that one, so if you would send me the statute, I would love to review it.
My guess is they'd handle it like the National Party did and say we're a private party and we'll do what we want. We rigged our own election, go to hell. You know.
No, we have adopted Robert's Rules of Parliamentary Procedure, and they state the order in which the laws rank, and the state laws trump party, whatever the party does.
Wonderful. Well, I hope we can actually enforce that.
I know you go out and you tell people this is going on, and they don't believe it, because the Democratic Party is supposed to be the party of the people, and we look to it to be the fair and equal treatment party. And when we find out it's not, it's just so difficult to keep the coalition together, and that's what we need to do in these times.
Yeah. And it pisses me off and reminds me that people make the party, so we have some bad people in the party. That's what it comes down to. So.
And because we elected them.
Yep. Yeah.
So the next one is about ignoring bylaws and parliamentary procedure. And this is the one that should excite many Democrats across the state. In 2016, we saw arenas full of people turn out in support of Senator Sanders that have all disappeared. We hope that they will come back regardless of who runs in 2020. But the delegate selection process is owned by the Democratic Party of Oregon, and it is given to it by the Democratic National Committee. The Democratic National Committee is working on the rules for the 2020 convention now. They're currently under selecting where the convention will be. So what they will do is that they will issue the guidelines to the Democratic Party of Oregon. The Democratic Party of Oregon will come up with policies and plans for implementing the guidelines. They will go back to the Democratic National Committee to get them certified, and then once they have been approved, then they will be implemented. The problem that we have is that prior DPO chairs created special committees to develop rules and processes for the selection of delegates to the Democratic National Convention. How did this happen? Well, it was done within the admin committee, a committee with which seems to run so much of what goes on, although they're not authorized to do so. They're just a very powerful advisory board to the chair, and really, what they're chartered to do is deal with HR issues, but the chairs over the past couple of years have relied upon them for many more things. So the DPO chairs, the prior ones, have acted in violation of parliamentary procedure by not following the DPO bylaws or special committees. Previously, no delegate raised a point of order to challenge this arrangement, so the practice persisted. So let's go to the next slide. Why does this matter? Well, the 2016 plan was written by the vice chair and Wyden staffer, along with one of the three DNC delegates, and the plan was ill-conceived. There were a couple of flaws in it. In 2016, the 2nd Congressional District was divided into 2 conventions, and because of the low number of delegates elected in the 2nd Congressional District for Hillary, there were delegates that were ineligible to run due to their gender. So if you were a male in the convention where they were only electing a female, you couldn't even run to be a delegate. And the reason why they divided the 2nd CD into 2 was because it is so big. People at the ends of the district could have to drive as much as 6 hours to attend the convention. And so what they did was that they divided into 2. There was one convention in Bend, and there was one convention in Klamath Falls. Excuse me. But you know, if you're going to blow $1,000 on attending a convention anyway, spending a couple of extra hours in the car shouldn't be that big of a deal if you want to participate. It's not good to have a situation where delegates can't run at all. And in retrospect, I find it astonishing that the Democratic National Committee allowed this rule to even be implemented. And then we had the selection of the delegation chair issue. It was not defined in the processes very well. And at the state convention, or where this should have happened, the chair tried to go into a non-meeting mode where they pretended that the parliamentary procedures and these sorts of rules of order didn't apply, and tried to ignore the whole issue, but it was actually forced to a head because the Bernie delegation had a majority of delegates, and they should have been allowed to to select the delegation chair and wanted to do so. They came up with a compromise proposal that was generally acceptable to a majority of the delegation, and so that's what we ended up with. But this is the kind of thing where if you don't define it well, then you can deal with it in the background, and you can make decisions that were not owned by the people who truly own what the decision should be. So if we go to the next slide on what the DPO bylaws say, the bylaws state that the Rules Committee has 3 things assigned to it. They regularly review bylaws and recommend amendments. The second one is the one that's most relevant. So they propose the rules and procedures for state conventions. Those rules and procedures are to be approved by the delegates of those conventions. And then the third is to review the bylaws of prospective special group caucuses. But you notice that the wording is procedures for state conventions. It doesn't say platform convention, doesn't say anything specific about it, just says state conventions. So in interpreting that, you go to what parliamentary rules say. So if you go to the next slide. So the parliamentary rules say a special committee may not be appointed to perform a task that falls within the assigned function of an existing standing committee. So in the previous slide, we saw that it was very explicitly assigned to the Rules Committee. So it is a violation of the parliamentary procedure for the chair to assign this to another group. And if for some reason someone thinks that the term state conventions refers to something, a subset of that, then each society decides for itself the meaning of its bylaws. When the meaning is clear, however, the society, even by unanimous vote, cannot change that meaning except by amending the bylaws. So if they want to limit the power of the Rules Committee to just platform conventions, then they have to amend the bylaws to state that. Otherwise, it has the authority to do all state conventions. And the final point is, if a customary practice, which you could call the creation of a special committee a custom, if a customary practice is in conflict with the parliamentary authority on any written rule, and a point of order citing that conflict is raised at any time, the custom falls to the ground, and the conflicting provision must therefore be complied with. So very clearly, if we bring this to the attention of the chair, the delegate selection convention cannot be assigned to a special committee. So what's being done? The DPO chair has been notified that the past custom of appointing special committees is in violation of the bylaws. And if that has not been resolved, then we're going to address this at the August 12th meeting. And finally, why this is so important, the 2020 Oregon primary could result in 2 or more Democratic Party delegations to the Democratic National Convention. So last time in 2016, we had 2 delegations, one from the Hillary Clinton side and then one from the Bernie Sanders side. We could have 3 and even in an extreme case 4 delegations going to the convention. And because the superdelegates will most likely not have the influence that they had previously, the vote of the delegates will be much more important. And the vote of delegates is bound on the first vote, but it could go to more than one vote if there is no clear winner from the first vote. So all of this could play out and have a contested convention for the first time in decades at the Democratic National Convention in 2020, which is why we want to get this right in Oregon now. So the real reason why we want to avoid it is that botched conventions create divisiveness within the Democratic Party, which weakens the party and the candidates. And again, this is not a convention and year in which the Democrats are divided. We have to be united to defeat the incumbent president in 2020. So on their convention rules authorship, what to look for on the 12th. We hope that we have the happy path and the DPO chair announces that the 2020 Democratic National Convention delegate selection plan will be written by the Rules Committee and that the Rules Committee will do a competent job. Or if they do not, we will most likely make a point of order under new business and bring this up. And what you can do then, if you are a delegate, we hope you take your role seriously in enforcing the rules and bylaws, because that is the only thing that holds up us together. Any questions, Betsy?
I don't see any.
I just want to jump in and say that what you're talking about here and what you're doing here, for everybody who's is not involved locally with a party or is doing something with their government, this is what happens. All this stuff that they have to fix just within the Democratic Party of Oregon, and this is why we have to be involved. You know, it sucks, but democracy doesn't work if we're not paying attention and making sure everybody's following the rules. It just blows my mind. Thank you for teaching us, Larry.
And you know, regular Democrats can attend your county meetings, and you can speak up, and you can meet your delegates to the State Central Committee, and you can express your opinion to them. If you don't know who they are, you can contact your county chair and find out who they are. If you don't know who your county chair is, hopefully they have a website. I know in my county, in Clatsop County, the elections office maintains the party contacts on its website. So hopefully, at the very least, you can go to your county elections office and find out who your representatives are in the Democratic Party of Oregon. So that's it for the topics today. Coming up, we have our next tutorial on Robert's Rules of Order, and today we are going to be talking about subsidiary motions. These are the motions that you see most commonly used inside of meetings. There's a couple of pet ones that people are sort of in love with, and you always see them drug out and thrown out on the floor. What we want you to do is understand how those are used so they cannot be used against you, and you can use them to advance your causes in whatever you want to achieve inside the meeting. So that's at, I believe, 12:30. And again, all of these shows are recorded, so if you're not able to attend the live broad stream, you can always find the recorded version and review it later. If you go to the next slide, how to get involved with our effort. So we are the advancementofdemocracy.org. If you go to advancementofdemocracy.org and join, we can get you hooked up with people who are studying parliamentary procedure and their rights. You can get involved with candidate selection. We're currently doing the plan for 2020, assessing incumbents, finding out where incumbents on both parties need to be replaced, and we will be then searching for candidates to groom and run against them in the 2020 election. So you're more than welcome to come and get involved in that effort. That's also a statewide effort, so wherever you live in the state, you're welcome to join. And on the next slide, we have upcoming events. August 10th, or excuse me, 11th and 12th is the Q3 State Central Committee, which we've talked about today. On Saturday, there's a series of meetings. There's a social event in the evening hosted by the Lane County Democrats, and then the committee meetings start at 8:30 on Sunday morning, and the State Central Committee itself starts at 1:15. All of this information is available at the Democratic Party of Oregon website, dpo.org. And if it's not listed on the homepage, you can go into the events tab, find the events listed under next weekend, and click on that. And you'll get the full agenda of how the weekend is planned and laid out, and including room numbers and where to go. We would like for everyone to attend who would like to. August 28th is the last day for the November 6th election to file for office. So in addition to the legislative seats, both in the U.S. Congress and the Oregon Legislature, there are a number of municipal seats that are up for election. If you are interested in running for office, these are great starter roles. You know, city councils, county commission races are great places to start your political career and your effort to engage and do your civic duty. Close on the heels of the filing date is August 30th, which is when the voters pamphlet statement is due. People who file on the 28th sometimes miss the fact that their statement is due 2 days later, or they don't have enough time to do it appropriately. We want all of the progressive candidates across Oregon to be aware of this, so they're not caught and lose this most important way of reaching out to voters and telling them about their candidacy. October 28th should be the date that the ballots are mailed, and then the election this year is November 6th. You can check to see what local positions are open for election with your county elections office. Hopefully they have posted them for you. If they have not, the quick and dirty way to find out what is available is to look at the election from 4 years ago, because most positions last for a period of 4 years. And what was on the ballot 4 years ago is probably the positions that are going to be coming up in this election cycle. There's a lot of, in Astoria, we have city council positions in Cannon Beach, Seaside, Warrenton, and Astoria, and we're finalizing the elections for the county commission seats that were not settled in the primary. And there's a soil and water conservation district board that's also electing their positions. Any final questions on the line, Betsy?
I don't see any questions, but I would like to make a stab for, the advancement of democracy and bring up the governor debates. There's 2 televised governor debates planned, and Patrick Starnes, who's the independent party candidate, which is one of the 3 major parties in the state of Oregon, has not yet been invited to those debates. So there's an effort with his campaign to try to at least get him on the debate, on those debates. And so if you go to his website, which is, I think it's patrickstarnesforgovernor.com, there's information on what they're trying to do in order to get him invited to those 2 televised debates. And if we're talking about democracy, I think we have a right to hear from Patrick, not as much as Patrick having a right to be in the debate, as much as we have the right to be heard, to hear what he has to say.
Yes, an argument could be made for not inviting minor parties, because the membership of some of the minor parties are quite low, but it is very awkward when they decide to ignore one of the 3 major parties in Oregon, and I think they have the duty to do that. Regardless of what they think about the independent party, it is another place where ideas can be brought forth and debated, and really that is what makes a democracy work, is debating ideas and coming up with the best solution. And suppressing debates is not healthy for democracy. Just like suppressing opponents of incumbents is not healthy. Anything else, Betsy or John?
No.
Well, we just got.
So thank you all for joining today. Please, if you have an extra $5, we are funded by the Bernie Sanders model of many donations of small dollar amounts. I think our average is probably $6. And it takes a lot of $6 donations to pay the bills for this organization. So if you would please go to donate.uphillmedia.org and throw some change our way, we would most appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you, Larry. That was really informative. Oz, thank you very much for being here and for all you're doing in Washington. Try to get one of these started. I totally forgot Larry's opening song, but I did pick an ending song. And it ties so well into what Larry and Betsy are talking about here, and it's really corporate control of information. When you deny legitimate candidates and legitimate parties airtime and the right to be heard, you minimize them, and it's a wonder that they stay small. When they don't have the same media amplification that the other parties get, right? And that's because we no longer have a fairness doctrine. It's because we have a Telecom Act that put our political speech in the hands of corporate media, and then they took it and said, "Well, we own this, and we can control who comes on," and that's been going on for decades, and that is so not the way democracy should work. In functioning democracies, all parties get equal time, and that time is controlled by the public. It's public time. It doesn't belong to corporate interests. That's a major failing we have here in this country. And it started with Ronald Reagan and was completed by Bill Clinton. So we got both Republicans and Democrats to blame for making this happen, right? I had a problem finding a song to play to end this show today talking about liars and lying, because everything mainstream media that would have anything to do with people being pissed off is being censored these days. And so I had to rely on what is becoming an increasingly smaller amount of independent media talking about political stuff that I can play on YouTube. It's again, corporate control of our content, and it is keeping the electorate uninformed. So we're going to go out with End of the Corporate Age, which was a song we played during the Bernie primaries, or the 2016 primary with Bernie, which at the time, I didn't realize how difficult it was going to be to end corporate control of the government. I really thought we'd ride in on unicorns, and they're so hard to find. They're so hard to find. But they exist. So we're going to watch this video. Thank you, Larry, for teaching us so much. And we'll see you guys at 1 with subsidiary motions. Right, Larry?
Yes.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Here you go. End of the Corporate Age.
Have seen a tremendous increase in their income, while at the same time the standard of living of working people and poor people has declined. CEOs make more than 500 times of what their workers make. The middle class is shrinking. Poverty is increasing, while at the same time the people on top are doing phenomenally well.
People always tell me, man, you're wasting your time. Can't you see the monolith is immobile? Yes, I tell them kindly, still I've made up my mind. 'Cause the sky above's as big and limitless as it ever was. Gather round, people, in the town square. It's the end of the corporate age. There's a new caveat, let the center beware. This is the end of the corporate age. There's no quick and easy remedy that won't end in more calamity.
I mean, this is a fantastic time. From my standpoint, this is the best time that I've ever had.
All the bloviators keep on spreading the meme that there's only so much room at the table, telling helping us. We're lucky to be eating the scraps, but we've got all the facts, and we're taking our places back.
Billionaires shouldn't be allowed to hide in the shadows. Make them step out in the open where the American people can see.
Gather round, people, in the town square. It's the end of the corporate age. There's a new caveat at the celery web. This is the end of the corporate age.
We are well on our way to seeing our great country move toward an oligarchic form of government.
There's no quick and easy remedy. That won't end in more calamity.
Corporate America, Wall Street, the major campaign donors are so powerful that no president can take them on unless tens of millions of people say, guess what, Washington? You are going to start representing the needs of working families and the middle class, not just the billionaire class. We know what's going on. We are paying attention.